News 9. English news as it should be.
Very good morning. You're watching News 9. I'm Karthik Malhotra, and on the show today, we will discuss what should we make of Donald Trump's recent statements just yesterday, in fact, that India has agreed to charge zero tariffs on US goods, and also telling Tim Cook to go slow on his India manufacturing plants. That's the big discussion that we will have on the show today. And also on the show, we'll understand, with the recent decline in gold prices, is this a time for you to shore up your gold resources? But first up, of course, should Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, look at slowing down production in India? And can he do that? That's the big story we're tracking right here for you on Morning Brief at 9. Morning Brief at 9. First up, let's look at all the headlines that we're tracking for you this Friday morning. US President Donald Trump says that India has agreed to charge no tariff on US goods. No official statement from the Indian government, even as Piyush Goyal leads a delegation to Washington to discuss the bilateral trade agreement with the US. Donald Trump also sends a message to Apple CEO Tim Cook saying, "I don't want you building in India," and also that India can take care of themselves. What do we make of Donald Trump's recent statement? We will discuss that on the show today. Meanwhile, India's exports to the US have risen as much as over 27% just in the month of April. Remember, that's the month that Donald Trump announced tariffs on 2nd of April, as high as 26% on India. India has revoked the security clearance for Turkish company Celebi Aviation. This amid tensions over Turkey's role in supporting Pakistan during Operation Sindoor. And amid the social media row, Celebi has clarified that the company ownership does not include anybody from the political affiliated Erdogan family. Meanwhile, India-US trade talks are progressing well. That's the statement coming in from the Commerce Secretary as Piyush Goyal leads a delegation to the US to discuss the bilateral trade agreement with the US. Gold prices have corrected sharply. The yellow metal has tumbled and seen its worst week in 6 months, all the way starting from November. And the US dollar has now become stronger. Meanwhile, Donald Trump has skipped the meeting in Turkey and has said that there's no peace likely to happen without Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin meeting face-to-face. And this weekend we'll see the final reckoning. Mission Impossible series likely to come to an end. Is this the last of Ethan Hunt that we will see? Start with the big story that we're tracking for you this morning. Aviation watchdog Bureau of Civil Aviation Security, or BCAS, has revoked the security clearance for Turkish company Celebi Airport Services in the interest of national security, days after Turkey backed Pakistan and condemned India's strikes on terror camps in Pakistan and POK as part of Operation Sindoor. Celebi has been operating in the Indian aviation sector for over 15 years and employs over 10,000 people, offering services at 9 airports. Celebi handles around 58,000 flights and 540,000 tons of cargo annually in India, as per its website. The services were used in the airports at Mumbai, Delhi, Cochin, Kannur, Bangalore, Hyderabad, Goa, Ahmedabad, as well as Chennai. The decision of BCAS comes against the backdrop of Turkey backing Pakistan and its condemnation of India's recent strikes in Pakistan. Pakistan has also used Turkish drones on a large scale in the military conflict with India. There are also calls in certain quarters for boycotting Turkish goods as well as tourism to Turkey. Now, social media all of yesterday has been abuzz with rumors of Celebi's ownership linked to Turkish President Erdogan's daughter. The company has rejected these allegations, saying we are not a Turkish organization by any standard and adhere fully to globally accepted practices of corporate governance, transparency and neutrality, with no political affiliations or links to any foreign government or individuals. Now, in the statement, Celebi Aviation India said that it's 65% owned by international institutional investors from across Canada, the US, the UK, Singapore, the UAE, as well as Western Europe. US President Donald Trump yesterday said India will charge zero tariff on US goods, and also took a jibe on Apple CEO Tim Cook, chiding him to discontinue with his plans to make iPhones in India. This comes in the wake of Trump's mission of making America great again by bringing manufacturing to the US. His tariff policy has been nothing short of arm-twisting tactics. The trade war with China has ebbed, but both countries are conceding some ground and hoping to work out a deal in 90 days or so. Trump's statement on India's zero tariff has no official confirmation, and his message to Tim Cook to not make in India, or China for that matter, may just be another one of his off-the-cuff remarks distant from ground reality. Let's listen in first to what he said before we bring in our guests on the show today.
It's very hard to sell into India, and they've offered us a deal where basically they're willing to literally charge us no tariff.
Well, that's Donald Trump saying that India has agreed to charge no tariffs on US goods. Well, Srinath Sridharan and Barnik Chitran Metra join me this morning. Srinath, let me begin with you. And first, let's just stick to tariffs before we come to what he said to Tim Cook. Now, on tariffs, zero tariff on US goods. Where does that really come from, Srinath?
I think it's a US wish list. I don't think it has been on the Indian radar or table at all for very, very long time. I would be very aghast if Indian government actually goes ahead and proposes zero tariff. That's one. Two, I think we must also look at the Trump's, not only the statements around tariffs, but he claimed credit for the ceasefire, the India-Pakistan ceasefire.
Yeah.
And also, I think there is a lesson for the Indian diplomacy, that the posturing or the perception management seems to be the new geopolitical reality. And it is coming in light of what the Indian delegation is supposed to fly to the US tonight. And it is a direct message saying this is what I'm expecting, and it's more like a bargaining deal, negotiation. He set the first rule saying that this is what I expect. So I think he's using optics completely. And I think if you look at a lot of the statements are not actually coming on the official US statements. It actually comes on Truth Social first, and then gets widely disseminated. Right, but absolutely. In effect, I think he's posturing, he's doing the big bully or the big brother style. And I think India has to learn to call off a lot of these claims. I mean, we have been very, very, I think, soft when it comes to some of this, considering, of course, the larger political narrative also, large Indian diaspora, visas, so many things that I think Indian political balance would be needed. But I don't think this zero tariff is ever on the table.
Right. Zero tariff doesn't seem to be on the table, at least that's what we are hearing. And Barnik, this also comes at a time when we have Piyush Goyal leading a trade delegation to Washington. As we speak, the contours of the bilateral trade agreement are yet to be frozen. So where is this whole narrative of zero tariff really coming from?
I think the narrative comes from Trump's wish list of having zero tariffs and claiming victory in the trade war. Now, let's be clear how these trade deals work, right? So you typically will have a basket of goods on which there will be a negotiated tariff from both sides. So there will be a list where India will concede to some of the Americans' request to reduce tariffs or make them zero. And similarly, the Americans have to reciprocate by giving zero tariffs on similar items which India exports to the US. So if you look at the current trade with the US, I think the only things we effectively import from the US are petroleum products, oil, and maybe some machinery, right? Whereas we export a lot more to the US in terms of pharmaceuticals, garments, gemstones. So again, let's see how this pans out. I think we will have to also give a little to ensure that there is a visible victory for the Americans on the trade deal. But what I'm very positive about, given the speed with which he executed the trade deal with the UK, which if you look at the substance of the deal, was not really that substantive. We will have some trade deal done in the next 90 to 120 days, and there will be some notional concessions given by the Indians to the Americans in return for us to continue export significantly to the US.
All right. Srinath, let me come back to you now. Hypothetically, if India does go ahead and agree to zero tariff or near about zero tariff, much lower than what India charges right now, what's the likely impact on the Indian industry? And I'm talking about sectors like auto, for example, agriculture, dairy. What happens to these sectors if India was to drastically cut down tariffs on US goods?
Yeah, I think the first one, the automobiles, would be kind of a setback economically. But more importantly, agri is a political flashpoint. The narrative could far well become political and offensive, saying that India, the government has kind of given in to a Western power and done a trade deal. So I don't think the government is going to give in very quickly to at least the politically sensitive agriculture. But automobile, I think at some point in time, we'll have to balance being competitive vis-a-vis China. That's where I want to bring in Trump's statement about telling Apple not to increase manufacturing base in India.
Let's listen to that statement before we get you to comment on it, Srinath. Let's just play up that statement specifically on Apple.
I had a little problem with Tim Cook yesterday. I said to him, Tim, you're my friend. I treated you very good. You're coming in with $500 billion, but now I hear you're building all over India. I don't want you building in India. You can build in India if you want to take care of India, because India is one of the highest tariff nations in the world. Now you got to build us. We're not interested in you building in India. India can take care of themselves. They're doing very well. We want you to build here.
Yeah, Srinath, what do you make of this? Take it away. You were talking about what you make of Trump saying and in fact telling Tim Cook not to make in India. What do you make of this statement?
I mean, it's a very clear bargaining message to India, saying that I would do whatever it takes to, because the Indian political system has been tom-tomming that Apple makes things in India. I mean, while the jury is still out, whether it is mixing the entire manufacturing or it's more value-added, just kind of assembling together. But I think he is hurting the very political narrative that India has been using about increasing manufacturing. So it's a clear signal to the negotiation deal that the Minister Goyal is leading, saying expect tough conversations. I think that's one for clear.
Okay.
And two, I think Trump is doing the, very, very offensive, in-the-face negotiation. It is not tacit, it is not under the radar, none of those. And I think we'll have to take some signals. I think face saver is what is going to become more important in this negotiation. To me, the classic US-China deal in Geneva, when we all thought that they're going to almost attack each other and kill each other, kind of shows that while both of them want to be the global superpower, that they need to do a trade deal that kind of helps them keep their economy ticking. I mean, the reality is China is the largest outsourced factory for the US in a sense.
Exactly. So let me bring in Barnik here. Barnik, we have heard of media trials. We've not really seen media negotiations, but that seems to be on display right now. Now, if Apple doesn't make in India and doesn't make in China, and potentially perhaps, the next sentiment can be that Apple should stop making in Vietnam also, then where does Apple make?
So let's agree that the likelihood of Apple assembling iPhones in the US is pretty close to zero, right? I think this is not the first time that the Trump administration has spoken about Apple assembling in the US. In fact, if you look at after the Liberation Day tariffs, the Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick went on television in the US saying he wants a lot of jobs in the US where people are screwing in screws into iPhones and gluing them together. Yeah. If you look at the economics of it, 2 points. One, if an iPhone were truly assembled in India, in the US, then the price to the American consumer would nearly triple. So imagine that you would have to start buying iPhones for $3,000 to $3,500. Right. That's highly unlikely to happen. Secondly, if you look at these capital investments to set up these lines and productions, it's a 3 to 5 year time horizon to move it from one place to the other. To be fair, even Apple has taken nearly 30 months to divert production away from China to India. By the time any decision gets done and by the time anything real happens, I think the Trump term will get over and you will have a new administration. So I think this has happened before. I think the message is directed towards Apple to encourage him to invest more in the US. Yeah. I think what they are really looking for is for Apple to make silicon, the Apple silicon manufacturing in the US, which is why you can set up a $500 billion factory only to do silicon. An assembly factory is not a big capital equipment. So I think the Indians should not get afraid of this posturing on Apple. This is a separate set. This is Trump doing something to apply pressure on Apple to increase their investments in the US. But it's highly unlikely that you will have Apple iPhone assembly move to the US, at least not in our lifetimes.
All right. Srinath, do you concur? And like Bodnik was saying, that $500 billion has been pledged by Apple in any case to invest in the US. But even if manufacturing were to hypothetically go back to the US, which seems mission impossible right now, it's very unlikely to create jobs, because eventually there's going to be automation, and that's going to defeat the very purpose of Make America Great Again and employment coming back to factories in the US.
See, I think the entire Trump narrative is mega and maga, right? I mean, he wants to make large mega statements saying that Saudi is investing $500 billion in AI in the US. Apple is going to put in $500 billion. I think these are all mega statements. His entire MAGA narrative of creating new jobs is a large question mark. But the reality is, he's a politician. He's playing to the gallery of talking about it's a zero-sum game. I don't care if India really gets beaten up, but the chances that I want to make my opportunity cost lower. So he's playing the true politician game, not necessarily the statesman game. So the answer in a long and short of it is, will Apple resist? I think there's an institutional independence that the US has. I won't be surprised if he really pushes them. Will Apple take them to Supreme Court? In the past, we have seen corporations take the government to the judiciary there to get free hand there.
All right, Bodnik, we have reached out to Apple, but we haven't really received a comment from them. They haven't responded to our request for comment. But like you were mentioning, it seems more about posturing and getting Apple to invest more in the US. But does this also mean posturing for the rest of the world, that if Donald Trump is not able to convince an American company like Apple to make in the US, how is he going to go after Japanese and German companies to invest in the US?
So I think it is quite unlikely that the jobs which have left the US in the 80s are going to come back.
Okay.
So I think that's a reality. I think the administration is swimming upstream here. Maybe in some sectors like automotive, there can be more local additive manufacturing. Maybe in some of the newer age sectors, you will see more manufacturing in the US. But if you look at where manufacturing is headed in countries like Germany and Japan, a lot of it is already automated, and within 3-4 years will be fully robotically managed, right?
Right.
So even if they come back to the US, you won't see any jobs created, as Sridhar pointed out, right?
Right.
So I think this is all about the politics. I think Trump is all about wins, right? In all of these cases, what you will see are a few trade deals. If you look at the substance of the deals, you will see that not major concessions will be given by either side on these trade deals, but enough will be done for the president and his administration to claim victory and move on, right? He is all about public wins. He's all about claiming victory versus really achieving anything substantive. So again, I am highly skeptical of any of these things really changing on the ground. There will be a period of turbulence. There'll be a period of statements. There may be Apple coming back and also committing more. Maybe publicly they'll say something, but on the ground, I don't think nothing much will change. India has nothing much to be afraid of. India should continue doing what it does, which is improving its ease of doing business, making investments more attractive, right? While India keeps on doing this, I think they should negotiate a trade deal with the US. There is a lot more for India to gain from a trade deal than lose.
Right.
To Sridhar's point, agriculture will never be something India will agree to, because on a principle of reciprocity, then the US has to agree to agriculture, and they are far more concerned about protecting their farmers. But on elements like electronics manufacturing, maybe some elements of auto components and auto manufacturing, India may have to give some concessions, but we should not be afraid. I think we have a large, vibrant industry. We do not need to protect our industries as much as we want to. So over a period of 5 to 10 years, we anyway need to reduce our tariffs across the board. Yeah. Maybe this is a good trigger for us to do it across some sectors, right? Albeit with some pressure from the US.
All right, Bodnik, thank you so much for your inputs this morning. Srinath, thank you. Pleasure having you both on News 9 every day. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
And staying with US President Donald Trump, during his visit to Abu Dhabi on Thursday, he pledged to strengthen US ties with the UAE, announcing deals worth over $200 billion and a new partnership to deepen cooperation in AI. Following a meeting with UAE President Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, the White House said that Etihad Airways has committed $14.5 billion to purchase 28 Boeing aircraft powered by GE Aerospace engines. The two nations also agreed to establish a US-UAE AI acceleration partnership, unveiling a new 5-gigawatt AI campus in the UAE, the largest outside of the United States of America. These agreements will expand the UAE's access to advanced American AI chips, easing previous restrictions linked to concerns over technology reaching China. Listen in.
And your wonderful brother came to Washington a few weeks ago, and he told us about your generous statement as to the 1.4 trillion. And all I could say is thank you very much. We will work very hard to deserve it. I have absolutely no doubt that the relationship will only get bigger and better. Your relationship and mine can't get better, so I can't say it's going to get better because it's at the highest level it can be.
All right, now that was Donald Trump in the UAE, but now let's take a look at Trump's tour of the entire Middle East over the past 3 days, highlighting the mega deals signed both in Saudi Arabia and Qatar ahead of that visit to UAE. Krishna Kumar joins me this morning with this detailed report.
US President Donald Trump began his Middle East tour on the 13th of May, starting with his visit to Riyadh, the capital of Saudi Arabia. Welcomed by Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, Trump described their relationship as strong while praising the Crown Prince as wise. He was joined on this visit by many major US business and banking leaders, including billionaire Elon Musk and OpenAI CEO Sam Altman. Now, during the visit, Trump and the Crown Prince signed a major economic partnership agreement. The deal covers a wide range of sectors, including energy, mining, defense, infrastructure, and technology. According to a fact sheet released by the White House, Saudi Arabia committed to invest an enormous $600 billion in the United States of America. According to the officials, the investments are intended to improve U.S. energy security, bring back manufacturing jobs, and strengthen technological innovation. The White House described this as a quote-unquote new golden era in US-Saudi ties, saying that the deals would not only drive growth in the United States, but also support shared security and prosperity. Now, out of the $600 billion commitment, Saudi firm DataVolt pledged $20 billion to build AI data centers and energy infrastructure in the US. An additional $80 billion will be invested in technologies across both countries by major American companies, including Google, Oracle, Salesforce, AMD, and Uber. Now, these investments were announced alongside an investor conference in Riyadh where 145 more deals were signed, valued at over $300 billion. US companies also secured over $2 billion worth of work on Saudi infrastructure projects such as the King Salman International Airport and the Qiddiya City Entertainment Complex. Billionaire Elon Musk made a separate announcement during the visit, stating that Saudi Arabia had agreed to use his Starlink satellite internet services in its aviation and maritime industries. This move is expected to expand internet connectivity across key transportation sectors. Another major development was NVIDIA's deal to sell 18,000 artificial intelligence chips to Humain, a new Saudi-backed company launched just days earlier. Chaired by the Crown Prince, Humain will also collaborate with companies like Global AI, Cisco, and Amazon. The plan is to build an AI zone in Saudi Arabia, including new AI infrastructure, servers, and networks aimed at advancing AI training and development. US-based AMD also announced a $10 billion partnership to deliver AI chips and software for data centers in both Saudi Arabia and the United States. Moreover, in a major policy shift, Trump announced that the US would lift sanctions on Syria. On the second day of his tour, Trump met Syria's President Ahmed al-Sharaa in Saudi Arabia and said that the US was exploring the possibility of normalizing relations with Damascus. Turkey's President Recep Tayyip Erdogan also joined the meeting virtually. Now, Trump urged the Syrian government to consider normalizing relations with Israel, similar to how the UAE, Bahrain, and Morocco had done under the US-brokered Abraham Accords in 2020. Now, Trump's next stop was Qatar, where Qatar Airways signed a $200 billion deal with Boeing to buy 160 jets, which the Boeing CEO described as the largest jet order in the company's history. Another major deal was signed between Qatar-based Al Rabban Capital and US quantum firm Quantinuum, with a $1 billion investment pledged for quantum technology and workforce development in the US. Defense deals were also finalized between the US and Qatar. These included a $1 billion agreement with the Raytheon RTX for drone defense systems and a $2 billion deal with General Atomics for remotely piloted aircraft. At a state dinner hosted by the Qatari government, Indian billionaire Mukesh Ambani was also seen greeting both Donald Trump and the Qatari Emir. Remember, Saudi Arabia remains the largest buyer of US military equipment with active foreign military sales worth more than $129 billion. In 2024, US-Saudi Arabia bilateral trade had reached nearly $26 billion, with American exports slightly higher than the imports.
All right, that was Krishna Kumar there, highlighting all that Donald Trump has been up to in the Middle East. We will slip into a short break, but coming up on the other side, gold has lost its sheen. Is this the right time for you to invest? And also a mood check on the Indian stock markets as they opened just a few minutes back. Kranti Batini will be joining us after the break. You're watching Morning Brief at 9.
When it comes to investing, quality isn't just a preference, it's a strategy. Introducing ICICI Prudential Quality Fund that invests in companies built on strong fundamentals with consistent performance, with an aim to give steady growth with lower risk to your portfolio. Now power your portfolio with quality picks. Invest today. NFO closes 20th May. Mutual fund investments are subject to market risks. Read all scheme-related documents carefully.
For an India that's chasing its dreams, this is the drive of your dreams. Introducing the all-new Škoda Kailak. Own your dream.
Škoda.
Operation Sindoor. Precision, courage, sacrifice. India's finest on India's front line.
India is giving a strong response to Pakistan's provocations, shooting down 50 of their drones. Our air defense system has so far intercepted all the attacks made on it successfully.
India is now well within its right to be able to give a bigger and a better response to every single move of Pakistan.
Every move, mission critical. Every heartbeat, nation first. News9 salutes the Indian Armed Forces.
Armed forces are facing a situation like this, and they've really risen up to the occasion.
You are in the hands of a very, very professional military.
The BSF, the CRPF, the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, they are also answered in full measure and then some.
Unflinching, unmatched, unbreakable. News9, with those who serve, always.
Extraordinary women, 3 stories of battling the odds, 3 tales of scripting a new narrative. A supermodel who walked the ramp and walks the talk. A football star who scored for all women. And an actor who became a voice of reason. They're braving the odds, scripting a new narrative. Hear their stories of grit, gumption and glory in conversation with Barun Das.
Welcome back. You're watching Morning Brief at 9. And what a week it's been on Dalal Street. We saw the historic rise in Sensex and Nifty on Monday, followed by a sharp correction on Tuesday and a little bit of volatility during the week. Well, let's look at the mood check of markets this morning as they've opened just a few minutes ago. There seems to be a gap down opening in the markets and a little bit of stress seen in the IT sector again this morning. Let's pull up the Nifty 50 heat map and try and make sense of where this correction seems to be coming from. Well, yeah, it is the IT sector. HCL Tech and Infosys are opening a little weaker again. Today, both stocks down about 0.8% or so in trade this morning. Meanwhile, Bharti Airtel has seen a sharp decline this morning. The shares are trading almost 2.6% lower than yesterday's closing. Remember, this has also been a week where we've seen a massive rally in Bharti Airtel stock as well. Let's look at the Nifty 50 and the Sensex index prices this morning. Right now, like we said, it's a gap down opening. Nifty and Sensex both down about 0.25 percentage point. 25,000 levels on the Nifty 50, not too bad, nothing really to be afraid of or frown upon this Friday morning. Meanwhile, Sensex is also holding up above the 82,000 point figure or so. The better news coming in from Nifty mid-cap as well as the small-cap space. In fact, small-cap 100 is up almost 0.8%. Volatility also ebbing a little, now down to below 17 levels. Kranti Batini joins us this morning to make sense of what to expect in the week ahead. This, of course, Kranti, has been a week with a lot of news domestically and internationally. We saw cessation of firing when it came to tensions between India and Pakistan, and that sent the markets rallying on Monday. And then, of course, inflation data also coming in line with expectations. What does one expect from the next week after trading closes today?
Yeah, Karthik, markets are going on a raging bull market rally, what we witnessed. And we are decisively, market could able to pass the range of 25,000 level at this point of time. If Nifty could able to withhold this level, we can see some kind of a upside potential in the market. But by and large, we need to see how the global developments that are taking place, statements from the Federal Reserve and also statements from President Trump. There are so many moving parts at this point of time, Karthik, that are determining the rally in the market at this point of time. So we need to watch closely the 25,000 level Nifty, if it could able to sustain for a couple of days time. So we can see some more strength in the market. But by and large, we can expect some kind of consolidation at this point of time. But the behavior of the FPIs is crucial in the next couple of days. They have been buying in a decisive way at the top of the market. So if the FPI's buying spiral going to continue on upwards, definitely market could inch further. So by and large, right now, what we need to see is the FPI behavior.
FPI behavior is what we need to watch out for. I want to shift your attention to gold, Kranti, and gold prices have eased this morning and were on track for, in fact, their steepest weekly decline ever since November. And this is coming on the back of a stronger dollar as well as a waning trade war between US and China for sure. And then US President Donald Trump's statements coming on India that India is going to charge zero tariffs on US goods. Of course, conflicting views, and we don't know what the basis of that statement really comes from. But the fact that gold has now fallen from its peak of about more than 1 lakh that we had seen in the week leading up to Dhanteras, which was the last week of April. And now a good correction, gold in India, in fact, at about 95,195 odd levels. What do you make of this decline in gold? Is this the time to consolidate, or is this just natural because the dollar strengthens as trade deals get stitched?
Karthik, yes, gold is one of the outperforming asset class at this point of time in the precious metals. Both the silver also that has been doing well. After touching 3,500 almost all for ounce per dollar, gold is at right now at a 5-week low at this point of time. In the international market, if the gold could able to sustain at 3,000 level, that's where I can see the strong support level. Of course, gold is perceived as the fear asset. So whenever there is a fear in the market, that can be geopolitical issues, any kind of uncertainty that comes in the market, it can be the trade wars or it can be anything. Okay, that makes the gold prices to move up. What we are seeing at this point of time, Karthik, gold is also not an exception at this point of time for the undue volatility is concerned. Historically, gold volatility, if you compare with the equity or any other commodity, gold volatility comparatively less. But what we are witnessing in the recent past has been due to the digitalization and also the ETFs and also the form of digitalization of digital gold is concerned, we are also witnessing some kind of unexpected spikes in the gold also sometimes. So what we are witnessing is, earlier we witnessed a spike, we are witnessing a profit booking. But by and large, my sense is gold is in a long-term bull market, and I expect the gold prices to strengthen up further, and gold can may test the recent highs also in the coming weeks. It can be possible, and it is very much on cards. So I will be a net buyer of gold at any given point of time if there is any dip, Karthik. So the gold is an uptrend. As long as we have presidents like Trump, and also if the Federal Reserve continue to go in this kind of way, definitely gold is going to be in an uptrend, Karthik.
All right, gold likely to be in the uptrend, and buy on dip seems to be the strategy coming in from Kranti Batini. Kranti, thank you so much for those inputs, and thank you for taking the time and joining us here on Newsline.
Thank you, Karthik. Always a pleasure.
Now let's shift focus to the new income tax bill which was introduced in Parliament a few months ago. Will the new income tax bill of 2025 simplify life for chartered accountants and tax filers alike? And also, what happens to the digital snooping rights that the bill gives the government? Well, Newsline's Krishna Kumar caught up with the president of the Institute of Chartered Accountants of India, Charanjot Singh Nanda, in an exclusive chat. Here's a short excerpt from that interview.
Also now then talk to us about the new Income Tax Act. You know, there's so much of awareness about income tax these days and the importance of the jobs of the chartered accountants. And in that context comes the new Income Tax Act, which promises to simplify the Income Tax Act to the point where it is not only understood by the professionals, as in the chartered accountants, but the common people can understand it. You know, tell us how will it change the lives of both the chartered accountants and the people?
I'll tell you, it is the income tax bill, and ICI has been pioneer in driving it. We have three initiatives. First, to prune down unnecessary sections. There are close to 553 sections. We want to bring down them to close to 470 sections. Number two, simplify, no jargons. Let an ordinary man who reads it is able to assimilate and use it for his initiatives. And third very important thing, to interpret the entire thing. Problems of interpretation lead to more than 70% litigation. So once everything is clearly interpreted, litigation will run off. The government, first of all, CBDT asked us for our people. We gave them 5 chartered accountants from our council. Then we set up study groups all across the 5 regions. We have 5 regions: North, South, East, West and Central. And we made 2 in different, we made one in Pune and another in Indore. So 7 study groups were set up, and close to 60 people were enrolled. And we were the first to be called by the Select Parliament Committee to make a presentation. On 6 March 2025, we made a presentation, and till now, we are giving them analysis of the entire act, plus any area where we could be of assistance to them. So ICA is very cognizant of the fact that it has to add value. It has to work as a very important constituent of the nation and educate and make aware public of the new Income Tax Act.
If I can ask you, the new Income Tax Act also speaks about, in case there is a suspicion over somebody evading tax, then the authorities have the right to, have the powers to get into their emails and their social media accounts and their digital wallets if need be. I know your thoughts on that.
It is easier said than done. You can't just jump into the privacy. Yes, if you find that a person is evading tax, he's turning money into a different source, then they'll jump in. It is not something which is very rampant in your and my account, but they see a person is a perpetual evader. They find that his acts are suspicious. Then also it has to be done through a very senior officer. His permission is granted, and then they can only jump into the privacy. I understand it's a matter of concern for the citizens, but don't worry. It is only for those cases where you find that certain alarming things have happened. Normally, your life will move as it is moving on now.
Okay, fair enough. That's as far as income tax is concerned. Let's talk about GST. Every time there's a GST council meeting, there's lots of expectations and hopes that, there'll be a rationalization of slabs, there'll be more uniformity in terms of the nature of goods and services taxed at whichever level. Sometimes you find like there's a huge disparity in the way different goods and services are taxed under the GST regime. Your thoughts on what direction should the GST reforms take?
When I think of GST, I'm reminded of a couplet which says, अपने हौसलों को खबर करते रहो, अपने हौसलों को खबर करते रहो, जिंदगी मंजिल नहीं सफर है चलते रहो. GST has to change.
Yeah.
And the best part common between IC and GST is that both of us were born on 1st July. When GST was born, the Honorable Prime Minister was with us in IG Stadium. Chartered accountants did their every initiative to ensure that GST sees the light of the day. And even today, maximum practitioners are chartered accountants, and they give very, very viable suggestions to the GST Council. See, Council also has to receive the suggestions, put them into perspective, and then again roll them back to the system. So this is done by the GST Council. They are, abreast with so many changes. Some are reasonable, some are non-reasonable. So they have to have a council meeting and then take a call what has to be rolled out. And therefore, let us not be very worried about the council decisions. They will take whatever decision is in the benefit of the nation at large. Or somewhere where they feel that certain taxpayers are unnecessarily being harassed, they will try to bend that issue. So this will continue. It will see. Now people have become used to having, earlier they thought now it is come, every time it is coming, but it will perpetually come to ease out the systems and add to the ease of doing business initiative of the government.
Chandrajot Singh Nanda, president of ICAI, there in conversation with News 9's Krishna Kumar. Well, before we slip into a break, let's look at the global headlines that we're tracking for you this morning. US Fed Chair Jerome Powell says US may face more frequent supply shocks, prompting review of inflation and job strategy. US stocks closed mixed as Cisco jumps on strong AI-driven forecast. United Health tumbles amid TOJ probe, while retail sales slow and producer inflation unexpectedly falls. Robinhood rival eToro makes strong debut on Nasdaq, with shares surging as high as 34% and valuing the company at $5.6 billion, marking the first US IPO to hit the market after tariff uncertainties delayed several listings. Turkish, Syrian and US foreign ministers hold trilateral talks in Antalya to discuss roadmap for lifting US sanctions on Syria following Trump's announcement in Saudi Arabia. Russian President Vladimir Putin declines Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky's Istanbul meeting, sends second-tier delegation as Ukraine-US criticize Kremlin stance. Meanwhile, Trump says only direct talks with Putin can break the deadlock. Protesters rally outside US Supreme Court as justices hear arguments on Donald Trump's bid to restrict birthright citizenship. UK economy posts stronger than expected 0.7% first quarter growth, surpassing major economies and boosting Reeves and Stammer's reform push ahead of Trump's global tariff threat. Asia-Pacific trade to stagnate at 0.4% growth this year amid tariff tensions. APEC warns as US-China meeting on sidelines sparks hope for WTO reform talks. Hollywood actor Tom Cruise returns to Cannes' red carpet for premiere of Mission Impossible: The Final Reckoning, sparking speculation over last role as Ethan Hunt in iconic action franchising. All these stories on the other side. You are watching Morning Brief at 9.
Warfare redefined.
Pakistan has not only been exposed, their narrative that their air force is superior than ours that narrative has been shattered.
Nature of warfare has changed drastically.
Misinformation campaign of Pakistan over the past 48 to 72 hours.
We are capable enough to thwart every attempt that is being made to attack the civilians, to attack our air forces.
The armed forces are giving an adequate and appropriate response.
India one step ahead. Every signal, every sky secured.
Hormuz could likely have been used against Pakistan. It's a good face saver, if I may use the term, for Pakistan.
What more evidence does the world need when we're talking about Pakistan's biggest export being terrorism?
Newsline salutes the Indian Armed Forces. Smart, swift, unstoppable.
You're watching News 9. Let's bring you all the global stories we're tracking for you this Friday morning right here on Morning Brief at 9. In a major diplomatic move, the US, Turkey and Syria held a trilateral meeting on Thursday to discuss the roadmap for lifting American sanctions on Syria. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan, Syrian counterpart Assad al-Shibani and US Secretary of State Marco Rubio met on the sidelines of a NATO foreign ministers gathering in Antalya. The talks came just days after US President Donald Trump made a surprise announcement to ease sanctions, marking a possible shift in US policy on Syria. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin declined a direct meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart Volodymyr Zelensky at Thursday's peace talks in Turkey. Instead, Moscow will now send a second-tier delegation for the much-anticipated peace talks, a move seen as a clear signal that the Kremlin is not ready for high-level engagement. Zelensky, who had publicly urged a one-on-one dialogue with Putin, would now have his defense minister lead Ukraine's delegation at the crucial Istanbul talks. Take a look at this report.
Russian President Vladimir Putin spurned a challenge to meet face-to-face with Ukraine's Volodymyr Zelensky in Turkey on Thursday, instead sending a second-tier delegation to take part in talks in Istanbul. Zelensky in Ankara called the delegation decorative and assigned Putin was not serious about ending the war.
I think that the United States of America and Turkey feel Russian disrespect. That is my opinion. There is no time for a meeting, no agenda, no delegation of high level. It is personal disrespect. I am not talking about Russians disrespecting us, which is obvious anyway, but it is mutual in between us. But they are now here, so it is disrespect towards Erdogan, disrespect towards Trump.
Zelensky said he would not go to Istanbul, but would send a team headed by his defense minister with a mandate to discuss a ceasefire. Russia said its team was in Istanbul and ready for serious work and accused Ukraine of trying to put on a show. Talks were further undermined by US President Donald Trump, who told reporters there would be no movement on peace talks in the absence of a meeting between himself and Putin.
I don't believe anything's going to happen, whether you like it or not, until he and I get together. But we're going to have to get it solved because too many people are dying.
Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said it was too early to say if Putin would attend talks in the future. The warring sides have been wrestling for months over the logistics of ceasefires and peace talks. The last direct talks were held in March 2022. Hundreds of thousands have been killed and wounded on both sides in the deadliest conflict in Europe since World War II. Washington has threatened repeatedly to abandon its mediation efforts unless there is clear progress.
The US Supreme Court on Thursday heard arguments on Donald Trump's controversial push to restrict birthright citizenship, a constitutional right long granted to children born on American soil. If upheld, the executive order could impact thousands of babies born in the US each year, marking a dramatic change in how the 14th Amendment has been interpreted for generations. More details in this report.
Trump must go now! Trump must go now! A group of protesters gathered outside the U.S. Supreme Court on Thursday, as the 9 justices heard arguments over President Donald Trump's executive order to restrict birthright citizenship.
Hands up!
14th Amendment!
The move would be a major shift in how the U.S. Constitution has long been understood and affect thousands of babies that are born in the country each year. U.S. Solicitor General D. John Sauer argued for the administration.
This order reflects the original meaning of the 14th Amendment, which guaranteed citizenship to the children of former slaves, not to illegal aliens or temporary visitors.
That's a good one. Birthright. That's a big one.
Signed on his first day back in office, Trump's order directed federal agencies to refuse to recognize the citizenship of U.S.-born children who do not have at least one parent who is an American citizen or a green card holder. Liberal Justice Sonia Sotomayor said during the hearing that she believes the order violates multiple Supreme Court precedents concerning citizenship.
If we're afraid that this is, or even have a thought, that this is unlawful executive action, that it is Congress who decides citizenship, not the executive, if we believe, some of us were to believe that, why should we permit those countless others to be subject to what we think is an unlawful executive action? As unlawful as an executive taking the guns away from every citizen.
The 14th Amendment Citizenship Clause states that all persons born or naturalized in the United States and subject to the jurisdiction thereof are citizens of the United States. The plaintiffs argued that Trump's directive violates that amendment. Washington State Attorney General Nicholas Brown spoke to reporters after the arguments.
So you're going to have people that not only lose the rights and benefits and privileges and honor of being an American, but they have no benefits whatsoever. It might be stateless. What do we do with those children? How do we address the problems that they are facing?
The judges mostly focused on the Trump administration's emergency request to scale back injunctions issued by federal judges in states including Washington that blocked Trump's directive nationwide. The conservative justices on the court seemed willing to limit the ability of lower court judges to issue universal injunctions, but they also appeared reluctant to issue a ruling without further delving into the legal merits of Trump's order. Here's conservative Justice Neil Gorsuch.
How do you suggest we reach this case on the merits expeditiously?
After more than 2 hours, it remained unclear how the Supreme Court might resolve the issue, or whether it would order further briefing. The court, currently made up of a 6-3 conservative majority, includes 3 justices appointed by Trump during his first term as president.
All right, from US, let's move to the UK. Britain's economy posted stronger than expected growth in the first quarter of 2025, a much needed boost for Finance Minister Rachel Reeves. But economists warn of tougher tests ahead, including Reeves' controversial business tax hikes and the ripple effect of US President Donald Trump's intensifying global trade wars. The question now is, can this momentum hold through mounting political and economic challenges? Listen into this report.
Britain's economy grew 0.7% in the first quarter, beating forecasts. It was a boost to Finance Minister Rachel Reeves, ahead of US President Donald Trump's tariffs taking effect. This GDP acceleration in the first quarter was a sharp rise from the 0.1% increase in the last quarter of 2024. That's according to Office for National Statistics figures. In March alone, the economy grew unexpectedly, expanding by 0.2% from February. In a statement, Reeves said this result proved, quote, strength and potential of the UK economy, which had grown faster in Q1 than, quote, the US, Canada, France, Italy and Germany. She and Prime Minister Keir Starmer are trying to kickstart Britain's sluggish economy via increased spending on infrastructure and other reforms that they hope will boost investment. But the Bank of England last week said it expected this Q1 growth jump to be temporary, with outputs likely to expand by 1% this year. And Trump's trade tariffs are expected to slow the global economy. So far, Britain's consumers have remained largely unfazed by worries about the outlook for the economy. Data published this week showed a rise in their spending over March and April.
And finally, Hollywood legend Tom Cruise lit up the Cannes red carpet for the premiere of what could be his final run as Ethan Hunt in the iconic Mission Impossible franchise. 62-year-old Tom Cruise pulled off his signature charm and thanked fans for nearly 3 decades of support to the high-octane Mission Impossible series. right, your mission, should you choose to accept it, is to stay tuned to News 9. Accept it. Thank you so much for watching.
Let me ask you this then. What is the one thing about your job that you don't like? The one thing about your job that you hate the most, for the lack of a better word?
I don't like